Thank you, James, for being here on a Saturday. I understand, and you have you took a time to explain what your company is doing, and also in the field of AI, and there is a lot more exciting stuff is happening. But before we get to the main tracks, we are very much interested in about your history and how about your career and what does it whatever it took you to come here to this position at this moment.
Sure, yeah. So I've actually been with Turnitin now for 20 years, which is a long, long time. So I've been in ed tech and specifically with Turnitin for 20 years. I'm originally from the UK, as you can probably tell from my accent, and um, I so I started in the UK and I was working obviously in the UK and in Europe. And then that gradually expanded over time. And then in 2015, I moved to Australia because we were setting up an Australia office, an Australia operation. And that became kind of the base for Asia Pacific expansion as well. Um, and then just the start of 2020, what are we now? 2024. I moved to Japan, so I'm currently in Japan. I've been here for a year and a half, and I'll be here for another year, and then I'll probably move back to Australia after that. And early this year, I also took on responsibility for Europe again for the EMEA region, Europe and Middle East. And so it kind of feels a little bit like going back to where I started in that regard. So I now manage all of Asia Pacific and all of Europe and the Middle East. Um, and, I've really been there from, obviously, I would say as a company, I think we're about 20, 27, 28 years old now. So we were a very early ed tech company in the space. And so I've really been able to see the growth of ed tech over that period. Um, and what's been, people ask me often that, why have you, how do you keep motivated or what keeps you at the same company for so long? And one of the things I definitely say, apart from the company culture, which I think is really positive, is that we're such a global company. I've been to, I think, over 30 countries since I've been with Turnitin, and there's very few edtech companies that there's probably none, I would say, that are so global. We have customers in nearly every country in the world, and obviously, I'm speaking with you in India at the moment, and we have an awful lot of Indian universities and schools that use us, and we have a big team in India, and that's kind of repeated in nearly every country in the world. So the chance to have an impact on a global scale is something that really continues to motivate me because I think it's such a fantastic opportunity. And yeah, it's a big part of the job that I like is going out and meeting people from different cultures and hearing obviously what the differences and the challenges that countries are having, but there is a common thread across all of them in terms of education is a wonderful sector to be in, I think, and certainly with AI, what I've seen is that AI is generative AI has sort of hit every country at the same time, which is really unprecedented in terms of a technology change. And obviously that's brought a lot of challenges, but it's also brought a lot of opportunities. And that's why it's so exciting, I think, now in the space that we're in now and the time that we're in, that yeah, it doesn't get boring for sure.
Yeah, I wanted to ask one thing. Like you now that you have been into multiple countries, and I'm like in India, there is a lot of conversation about building AI. We want to take the lead in this space, but
Right.
we don't have that lead because, say for instance, China, and because of their scale, and already we have OpenAI and Perplexity. All these are like US based, and so I really want to understand what is the conversation in, say, Japan, where you are right now regarding AI. I'm just asking, and maybe other geographies you may have recently visited.
Yeah, so as I say, I think every that there is an awful lot of similarity in terms of the impact that generative AI has had on the education space. I think there's slight differences in adoption amongst amongst students and or faculty. So I think here in Japan, it's probably the level of uptake that from students maybe has not been as fast as in, say, US or Australia or probably even India, to be honest. But there are a lot of um, I think there's a lot of similarities in that space. It also does depend on your education system in terms of the different impacts because there's different education systems, right? Some are more exam based and some have been more kind of essay based, I would say in the past. And certainly if you were setting a lot of essays as for higher education universities as a way to assess students, then generative AI is going to be more impactful than if you were doing a lot of exams that were in-person exams because there's going to be, especially if it's pen and paper, there's going to be less disruption there. So there's some slight differences there. One of the interesting things so we did some research that we released just a few months ago to kind of compare and contrast attitudes to AI across a number of countries, including India, actually. And I think our research is pretty unique in terms of that it's across 6 different countries, I think, 6 or 7 countries, and includes kind of what you'd say is more developed markets like the US and Australia, as well as a country like India, and we did Mexico as well, which are at a different stage. And again, there was a lot of similarities in terms of attitudes. One of the really interesting things I think is that students are uh, really concerned that on the one hand, of course, they're excited about AI, but there are some concerns about how it might stop them learning some key basic skills. Um, and that's probably something we can delve into a bit further later. But one of the things that did stand out from India in the survey was actually in terms of positivity towards AI, India is actually at the top. So there's more positivity towards AI than there is anywhere else from that survey. And that kind of, I do come over to India quite a lot, and that kind of does match with sort of the anecdotal conversations I've been having. I'd love to know your opinion on that. But I think one of the things that people in India see is, some of the challenge. I mean, India has so many bright students and so many students who so I think for the bright students in terms of them being able to go even higher, AI gives opportunities. But also for kind of the next tier down, how when you've got a population as big as India, how can you really scale up the teachers and the institutions to be able to support all of that? And I think it's a big challenge. And so I think AI probably will bring possibilities for that as well. I don't know if you have an opinion on that.
So, what is happening? Like, if I talk about India, as you said, like, yes, of course, there is a lot of positivity and a lot of people are embracing it there in their own way. There are a lot of companies that are building really, really good platforms using generative AI and AI in purpose, say, right? And they're like really milking this open source, whatever they can get out of, and especially, I know, for instance, a couple of like deeply like researched about some platforms building personal finance,
Mm,
going diving deeper into personal finance. However, the conundrum is right now is that while we want to embrace AI, but also the challenge is that we don't have an AI ready workforce because it's so sudden, right?
mm,
For
mm,
instance, a lot of large enterprises now they're into cost cutting. Like, for instance,
mm,
recently Oracle cut down jobs, right? And now all those kids or young people or people in the workforce, Microsoft or maybe say Amazon, all these people are reducing their stuff. Like even Salesforce cut down. So now that India was the biggest exporter of this, students to
mm,
turn into IT professionals,
mm,
or they were part
mm,
of that thing, right? And now AI is just just trying to replace, especially in a lot of departments. So now we have to immediately prepare a workforce that is ready for that kind of that can work with that AI, and that kind of
Hmm.
know-how
Hmm.
I feel that is not there at that moment. And
Hmm.
considering that India's like it's a very diverse place, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
the access of the same technology might not be the same. It could be uneven. Like,
Hmm.
say bigger cities like say Mumbai and Delhi and Bangalore, right? You will be familiar with these cities, right? Here
Hmm.
you might even hear the buzz, but a lot of also talent comes from the smaller towns, right? And
Hmm.
the educational institutes over there, I'm not sure if they're even speaking about it, when they're talking about it. I barely
Hmm.
hear any comment from
Okay,
any
interesting.
provincial, like in a simplified, like say provincial
Hmm.
governments or
Hmm.
states,
Hmm.
so that is like a big gap, and it's so sudden that even a lot of people, because for instance, I'll give you one example. One of the easiest jobs which a guy with a simple graduation degree could have gotten was customer support, like the
Yeah,
telecalling
yeah,
or providing
yeah, yeah,
support,
yeah.
for instance. Now that job is quickly getting automated very fast, right?
Hmm.
So all the
Hmm.
big companies are now using AI for customer support, and the manual interventions is reducing. So now that kind of workforce, I don't know what will they do, like how will they upgrade, what are the skill sets they need, or where they will get it, or what will be the standardized education, because uh, in India it's very, it's a very uniform education, right? Like in
Hmm.
terms of like, okay,
Hmm.
this is much more, say for someone clears IIT or IIM, these are
Hmm.
very reputed
Yeah.
institutions. So what will happen to those who will not be able to make to these two institutions, right?
Hmm.
Especially given all these things, right? And that is the problem. The larger workforce is there, right? The
Hmm.
people coming out from IIMs and IITs are lesser, but the larger workforce who are working is coming from all these, and there is no mention of AI. How will they be trained? How will they be equipped with all these things? And coming down to where you will find much more relatable is like the at university level. It's not really that kind of people. Like kids know that there is something called ChatGPT. They can use it, but they're not like even. But at educational level, I don't see that is happening that as of now, at least as of now, there is not happening, and for such a big work demographic, the highest number of students must be coming
Yeah.
from India to Australia and all these countries, right? So this will be a big challenge, I think, if the localized versions are not there.
Do you think that kind of further down the line that because one of the great things about AI is the ability to give much more personalized learning, right? But the key obviously is how do you get that? How do you make students aware of that? And how do you get it in the right way to the mass of students? I think one of the things with India, of course, is that access to internet, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically isn't a problem anymore. I mean, it's not like there's bandwidth issues or I remember the first time I went to India and it was hard, it was hard to get access to internet. Now, of course, it's kind of everyone's on the internet all the time. So that's not a challenge. AI itself will become cheaper and cheaper. Um, but I think one of the interesting debates will be around structured access to AI versus so within an educational institution versus learning self-paced learning or more B2C type AI use. Um, but yeah, I guess the question is how do you even is there just going to be this gap of that people just aren't aware of it and how do they get exposed to it, I guess, like, how do they understand the potential that might be there for them?
Also, the challenge is that, because it's just not students who needs to be equipped. Like there is an
Yeah,
entire system, like ecosystem, where teachers have to be
yeah,
taught. And then again, teachers at school level, at higher school, and different kind of schools we have, and especially the much more affordable education is provided by the government, right?
Yeah.
over here,
Yeah. Yeah.
where it is much more equal access to everybody, like, everybody can come,
Yeah.
especially from the underserved community. But for them, there might be a disadvantage because I don't see a lot of things. Maybe private institutions, private schools might at least mention it somewhere in their books, maybe, or maybe they start giving a heads up. Okay, there's something called AI, and they might start doing it because that's something I've seen. Like, for instance, my daughter learns a bit of coding. Not really hardcore
Mm-hmm.
coding, but bits of coding because it was all
Yeah.
raged a few years ago. So now she can, like, do something on, like, some software there is, and she can code a little bit, make a character movement up now. But where my study, my school, my daughter studies, right? That kind of access is not available to a lot of Indians, like Indian kids,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm.
so that is a big gap right now. And the only thing is, like, the entire conversation is very limited to people who are very tech savvy and people who are, like, in the space. But in the general masses, they're not, like, really concern, like, might be a concern for kids, students, but that kind of, like, the immediate button to, just we need to quickly switch the gears, that is not happening. Also, India is trying to implement some sort of a uniform education policy. So for a country like this, it moves very slowly. Any
Yeah.
policy implementation is very slow. It takes sometimes years. And one of the reasons why, like, one of my concerns is, like, with AI, it is so sudden. There
Yeah.
might be a challenge after, say, the workforce with the workforce.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I don't think that India is alone in a lot of these challenges that you say. I think that a lot of them are seen across, I mean, nearly everywhere. The challenges of, training teachers, the challenges of what's going to happen with the workforce. I think all of those are there. I clearly India has just the scale of it, and as you say, the just the nature of um, but these are all challenges that you had before anyway, right? Like these, this is it's always going to be hard to get things moving and get uniformity. So I can see, um, and look, I absolutely understand, and I certainly agree with everything you're saying in facing those challenges. Um, I do think though that if yeah, I think India has obviously so much potential, so many, if in the ideal world, for those people for those students, whoever who are smart enough, who in the past wouldn't have been able to get access just because of where they were in the country or because of finances or whatever, that if they suddenly see what they can learn and how they can progress by accessing some level of AI, I think that has to be good. So I think it is always going to be this two yeah, there's going to be two sides to it. It is definitely disruptive, and I'm not saying that there's no challenges with AI because I fundamentally believe they are. As I said, one of the concerns I think that I really have is, um, and we're really seeing in places like Australia or in the more developed markets is, uh, you know, people really being concerned that students will be overusing AI, right? Overusing AI and not learning key skills, or not using AI in the right way, either to cheat or just not deliberately even to cheat, but just because it's there and they can ask it answers and they don't have to work. And so, yeah, it's definitely going to be a kind of two sides to the impact for sure. Um,
So I wanted, like, thoughts on, students using AI, right?
mhm.
Um, Like, do you think it's a good thing, it's a bad thing, or it's just not completely black and white? There is a gray,
Yeah,
there's something much more contextual to it because at the same time you would want learning to be faster and much more
yeah,
white democratic, like, and then to easily accessible to everyone.
yeah.
And but do you think that it's good for, the newer generation that will come, who will have all the answers on So through ChatGPT, right? So we have this joke over here, like, we cleared our exams, without using ChatGPT. We had to memorize everything and
Yeah,
write
yeah, yeah.
content, right? Now these guys can just, use ChatGPT
Yeah.
and maybe any other AI for that matter, right? But do you see it's a good thing or it's a bad thing, or do you think it's a natural evolution? Like, for instance, we started from in like for instance we were Google searching, right, for the longest time we
Right.
were searching, we were using before in the early days we used to have like some sort of encyclopedia, right, or digital
Hmm.
encyclopedia if you go back in the time, right? And then in between we started using this Alexa and Siri,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? But do you
Hmm.
think AI is that kind of evolution, but or is it just much more taking our space, taking space in our lives? And especially for students, what do you think? Is it a good thing or bad thing?
So, I mean, as you said before, a little bit before, absolutely, we need to be producing students who know how to use AI because that's what businesses need. And I think it's kind of a cliche that people say that you're not gonna, AI is not going to take your job. Someone who knows how to use AI is going to take your job. And I don't, I'm not 100%. I think maybe things have moved on a little bit from that. But I think the fundamental principle of that still applies, which is that universities need to be producing students who are fully aware of how to use AI properly and use it to really enhance their abilities. But I think the key thing there is enhancing abilities because the key with AI is, as far as I see it, and as I use it, is that I'm always in control, right? I'm not. I'm using it to um, speed things up for myself. I'm using it it's rather me going have to research lots of things, on the internet or wherever, and spend half a day on it. That I can get that very quickly through generative AI, but I still need to validate that. I still need to think about how to apply that. And I'm never going to just be, copying and pasting that and kind of, as a human, you're losing control there. Um, and so that to me is, we talk a lot about the responsible use of AI and I say responsible learning of AI. And what does worry me is if students as to your point, our generation and every generation older than what, 23 now maybe, kind of went through all of learning before generative AI. And so they had no choice. Yes, there was always you could copy and paste stuff, but um fundamentally you had to still do an awful, you just had to do your own learning in order to get to do the work. You had to do your own learning. And I think now there is because you can never completely um, rule out AI as a like students are always going to have access to AI in certain ways. One of the dangers will be that they just don't do that learning. And as I said, not through any deliberate fault of theirs. There'll be some students who always just want to do shortcuts, but just because it's so easy to get the answer from ChatGPT or wherever else and not have thought through that at all. And so, one of the things that we've recently released to kind of help support this when it comes to writing is our product called Clarity, which is really controlled AI environment. So it's a composition space, a writing space where we have an AI assistant in there, but the AI assistant is only going to give advice. It's not going to write anything for you. It's going to tell you, it's going to help you in terms of ideally develop your thinking or tell you where you might need to go, but it's not going to do the work for you. You're still forced to do it. And I think that is going to be so important. We have to help students with environments that still force them to do the thinking, force them to do the hard work, because that is how you build the skills. You do not build the skills if you're just putting in a prompt and and then copying and pasting the answer, right? That is not AI. That is not learning how to use AI, right? Because anyone can do that. It's about how to utilize AI in that early stages to support your learning. And then once you have that learning, once you understand how to write, once you understand how to research, once you understand how to do critical thinking, then of course you can maximize your use of AI in the right way. But you've got to really focus on those key skills. It's so important.
Also, there is one concern leaving students with the AI is that the AI itself is not like perfect at the moment, right?
Yeah, of
There's
course.
its own bias. It doesn't get cultural nuances. For instance, what it might say things about Japan or India, it might not be culturally relevant. It might respond to it, but
Yeah,
not really get the local nuances, right?
yeah,
So now what happens is like the first thing is that the AI is not completely perfect, right, in terms of
yeah,
getting the responses per se. Second, it has its own biases, and sometimes it just goes in this weird loop, or and then there are like issues like hallucinations and so on, right? A lot of people have complained, like these AIs will just conjure up imaginary examples of real. So,
yeah,
for instance, in legal, like they were researching about some case, right? And the AI just delivered a imaginary case between X versus Y. Had they not checked it before, they would have just blindly started no,
yeah,
doing it. While we had this know-how because we were still very apprehensive of the new tech, right? Because we are like, subconsciously trying to resist it. But for the kids, like for the teenagers or for them, they are gonna blindly trust, right? And if the AI just starts telling lies about it, it gets a lot of things right, to be very honest, but a lot of things it doesn't get right or doesn't understand it completely, right? And and then it comes to like, do you want government interventions in that, or do you want to like what kind of regulations you want to put in, how much will it be, how internet is like more or less like difficult to control
yeah,
at the moment, right? So with ChatGPT it will become like highly uncontrollable, right? Because there's no point like banning it or trying to block it,
hmm hmm
or trying to have some sort of a censorship, right? I'll give you one example for the China's DeepSeek. When it
hmm
was launched, it was highly censoring a lot of content.
hmm
And then we had like one Indian company trying to build something similar, and it was also trying to censor it in its own way. So,
hmm
so, so there is these are the all the problems, and to just to throw it to the students or the kids, do you think it's a big problem?
Well, yeah, as I say, I think the key is to introduce AI in a controlled way. And by that I mean, so if you think about like what kids are going to do on their own time and at home, whatever, you know, you're never going to be able to control, right? That's, I mean, parents maybe can try, but in general, you can't control that. But what schools and universities can do, obviously, is make sure that when they're setting assessment, that they're ensuring that that assessment is developing the relevant skills, but also can't just be outsourced completely to AI, right? So um, the beyond that, of course, the schools also have a responsibility, I think, to teach all those things you just talked about, kind of the ethics of AI, hallucinations, the fact again that you're always going to have to check it, right? It will get things wrong. It is just a predictive text writer, essentially. It has no knowledge of itself. All it's doing is giving you the most likely answer. I think it has got a lot better in terms of kind of hallucinations and actually being able to pull the correct things, but there's always the chance that it's going to be wrong. So all those things need to be taught. But the so that side of AI needs to be taught, but then you can't ignore, ultimately what school and university is about teaching skills, right? Is about ensuring that students are learning.
Mhm.
And so you have to make sure that the assessments, what AI changes, what generative AI really changes is this ability to shortcut the learning to complete assessment. That is the danger, right? That is the danger, as you said, that rather than actually learning the stuff for the exam, that you just use ChatGPT and fill in the answers, right? And you're going to get it right, but you haven't learned anything. You haven't, there's nothing there. So having a space where, or having an assessment type where you're controlling it it could be a face-to-face exam. The challenge, of course, with face-to-face exams sometimes is that are they a good test of learning? Are they good, do they promote the right type of learning if you're talking about critical thinking or other things, or is it just memorization? That's something that's harder as well. So that's why certainly in certain countries, before the pandemic, everyone was trying to move away from exams. And then ChatGPT happened, and a lot of people are obviously sort of rethinking that. Um, but the if you're setting written assessment, and written assessment like an essay is obviously going to be generally is why people set essays is because it's good for critical thinking. You have to research, you have to find sources, you have to make an argument, all those things. Those things are crucial. The fact that it's an essay at the end of it is just a byproduct of the learning, right? And before, what we used to have was that you could assess the essay, and from the essay you could make a judgment of where the learning had, that the learning had happened. The problem with now is if all you're doing is looking at an essay, you're not going to be confident enough that the student has actually written it, right? So the focus, I believe, in the future is going to be much more on process, is going to be on process of assessment. Just like there's always been in things like maths where you have to show your workings and not just the final answer.
Right.
Like it will be with writing, you need to show the progress of how you need to show your drafting, the progress, how your thought process is how you got to it as proof that you did that piece of work, but also so that we can really see, so that teachers can really see kind of how your critical thinking is going, how your research is going, how you're actually working with this, because then they can really judge to see if someone is able to do those things, but also because then they can actually advise the student much better, right? You can because now if I think about a workplace environment, being able to write 3,000 words well is not really a skill that people need, right? Because that is absolutely what generative AI can do. Generative AI can write well. So, but what you need is you need someone who's able to think through what they need generative AI to do properly, need to be able to research all those things. And those things I think you can still assess as part of writing, but it's actually the process that's going to be more important than the finished product, right? The finished product will obviously tell you in terms of, have they, do you understand how to argue well, all of those things, but the process is really the keep it for that. And so that's the direction that we're going. And certainly we've had a lot of positive feedback in terms of thinking about that. So and that's been across the board actually, and everywhere I've been so far has been thinking positively about has been responding positively to that.
But do you see there is a bit of conflict, for instance, right? While you want universities and schools to adopt an AI first curriculum, but at the same time, you want a lot of checks and balances within the AI. So do you see that there is a bit of a conflict in this?
I think there is. I read something recently about um, how AI is a wicked problem, which is a concept that basically there is no perfect answers, right? There's always going to be trade-offs. There's always going to be there's always going to be there's yeah it's I'm not saying it's a lesser of two evils because I don't think it's that sort of nature, but you're always going to have to accept that there is no one clear path that you can take and everything's going to be perfect, right? So it's definitely disruptive from that point of view. So yes, there are going to be there are dangers, there are things I guess that we now have to face that maybe we didn't wish we had to face. But you can't go backwards, right? That's one of these things. You've just got to adapt with the present day and with how things are. And yeah, so it's going to be difficult. But the best I think we can do is, like I said, whenever I, the ultimate thing that whenever I'm thinking about AI is I come back to this again is the human has to be in control, right? The human has to have the skills, we have to be in a place where um that we all are in control of the AI and the AI is not in control of us, right? If the first thing that if you're in be it at university or school or in the workplace, someone asks you the question and your only response is going to be, I'm going to have to ask the AI, then you've already lost control, right? If your answer is well, if you're thinking as well, I suspect it could be this or it could be this, and let's see what the AI is saying. I don't kind of agree with that. Like that's where you've got to be in a place of where you're controlling it, and so we've got to get in this position of um, graduating people to the workforce who are retaining control, retaining their human intelligence, their human know-how, which is all of the things as well that AI can't do. Because again, let's remember, AI isn't intelligent on its own. All it is a predictive tool based on knowledge, and so based on huge amounts of data. Um, and so it can't do things like humans can do. It can't think in certain ways that human can think because it's not human. You shouldn't personify AI in that way. So let's remember that we're humans and we need to be in control, but you have to have those skills to be able to do that.
But if you see, like, so there have always been people who have been like, trying to game the system. Right. And
Yes,
yeah, yeah, right. And with AI is just like one of the ways, you want to game the system.
correct,
So now that
correct.
you have set up like AI detectors and so on, right? Even for instance, it's very easy to make out like at least for text, I can say for paragraphs and everything that yeah, it's AI written. Someone has written using ChatGPT because it's a certain way of writing, which we can easily identify, right? However, there are also tools, that actually kind of humanizes the same
Hmm.
ChatGPT written content. For instance, and I have used these software, they will just try to flip the entirely AI written content into something else, and they do it very well. Okay, and then it becomes a very big technology level challenge. Like what's real, what's not real, at some point
Hmm.
starts getting blurred, right? If for especially
Hmm.
or maybe for the larger text, you have more bandwidth to at least check it. But for the smaller text, through 3 lines, 4 lines, 4 sentences, 5 sentences, or 6 sentences, if someone is trying to do that, right? And knowing that even writing these things are critical part of everything. So how do you aim to take on this challenge?
Yeah, so I guess multiple ways. So I think as you know, we developed AI detection kind of at the start of at the start of Gen AI wave. We'd actually been kind of working on it before ChatGPT was even released, and so we were in a pretty good position there. We've recently released some updates to actually particularly target humanizers. So we've kind of done analysis on that, and we're now confident that certainly with the majority of them anyway, that we're able to detect that because it is still a statistical signature at the end of the day. They like to use a humanizer term, but there is no human involved, of course. It is still AI. Um, uh, More broadly than that, so again, I think part of it or a huge part of it is going to be this analysis of process. So, proving that the work has been done by a human, by a student, because you can look at the process, right? That you can go back and you can see clearly that the work has been done, where it's being, copy and pasting is fine if you know if it's coming from a good source, if you've referenced it. You can obviously rework things in your own words. All those things are fine. You can use generative, you can get ideas from generative AI as long as the output at the end of it is clearly your own, and that you've only used that as a brainstorming tool, or you've gone and changed it, you've augmented it with other things. So it's understanding that process that is going to be key. The other thing I would say is, what we'll probably go to as well is a lot more. Um, there'll be more oral elements as well. So actually speaking to students to check that they've got that understanding. So there's gonna be things that we bring in to or universities that bring in to kind of validate that learning has happened. Um, and it's AI detection. We definitely believe is still part of that. It still absolutely does work, and it's one piece of data and a signal that you can use. But certainly, my belief is that the process side of things is now much more important. Understanding the process, and like I say, using that as a learning opportunity as well.
Mhm. But another, one of the pitfalls of people using AI is the privacy, because this is one question I ask all the guests whenever they come on my podcast. I ask them, would you rather have AI knowing everything about you or AI knowing nothing about you? Right? Because we had long ago I had reviewed a book, and it had a very interesting theme, like how people are like, I might not tell what I feel about my whatever I'm feeling to you or my friend, my family, but I'm confiding a lot in on Google. Like if I might be searching
Yeah,
symptoms, I might be searching
yeah,
things which I like, for
yeah,
instance,
yeah,
clothes, but I would not go and share it with people. Like now, what
yeah.
happens? The trade-off is that Google now knows more about me than I would know. Like, like the company can easily profile me. Okay, this is the person. He likes
Yeah,
these things. On the weekends, he likes to do podcasts. So let us sell him. On the weekends, let's show him ads of equipments or maybe so to mics and so on, right? So
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
similarly,
yeah,
it knows a lot more. Like now that with ChatGPT is and all, we are asking much more contextualized content. And if
yeah,
you read news, right, a lot of kids are taking advice from ChatGPT. They're trying to replace this thing with the mental therapist and so on and so on.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But the thing is, it's a privacy nightmare, right? Because the entire philosophy
Yeah,
more I tell AI more about myself, the better it learns, like the better it gets. This is the loop, right? So it's a privacy nightmare, I feel.
yeah. Look, I mean, everyone has different levels of comfort in terms of what they're willing to reveal, I guess, right? I'm certainly on the cautious side on a personal level in terms of, the type of queries I would put into ChatGPT and the amount of personal information that I would reveal. So I would definitely caution people again, like you say, really think this is not a human. It's not like you're speaking to another human. It isn't. It is a machine. And depending obviously on how you have the settings and things, is how much it's gonna use your content or things. But yes, there is I think everyone should be pretty cautious about what they're how they're interacting with AI. I think when it comes to an academic setting, I think so. Obviously, we're not going to take anything personal off the student. We're not saving personal information or anything like that regard. It's only we're only operating in an assessment in university assessment scenario. Um, and I think really the one of the differences I think that the world of the generative AI brings though is that there's an importance in an academic setting. There's just an importance of more transparency. So uh, both uh, y- uh, teachers and students, I think, need to be comfortable with more transparency in how learning is happening, more transparency in terms of how things have been put together.
Mhm.
Um, uh, because again, we have to really now focus so much on are the skills being developed properly? Are people genuinely developing skills? And so there's people are going to have to get more comfortable, I think, with more transparency on both sides.
Mhm.
Um, and um, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think what one of the things I think that again I come back to about the kind of the human in there. I think that as humans, if you're a bit more transparent and if you're more comfortable at being open with another human, then you're gonna have a better relationship and you're going to um, you're going to develop better, I think. You're going to be in a better position. So, um, yeah, I don't necessarily think that more transparency in education is a bad thing, but obviously you know, there has to be boundaries, and yeah, everyone should always be comfortable in terms of, not giving away too much personal information or anything personal about them that is not relevant to
Mm-hmm.
the situation or everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think it is it is generative AI, I would say, adds another level of potential concern on that. But as you said, I mean, this is not new, right? The thing that we heard for years has been that if you're using something on the internet that's free, well, you're the product, right? Your information is what they're making money off if it's
Correct.
free. You either buy it or it's your information they're making money off. So I to that degree, I don't know there's a big significant change on this because, like you said, we've always had it where you'd be Google searching something and then you suddenly start getting ads for that exact thing. I mean, so
Mm-hmm.
um, there's been a level of, you've never had full privacy on the internet since the start.
So, for instance, now, what should be the role of, say, educators, who are training, who are trying to build and pass on this AI content or trying to block certain. So, what is your understanding? What should they be like? What should be their role at the moment? Should they like, so for instance, I see like, a lot of teachers are against students using AI, even if it is in a limited manner or controlled manner. For them, it's a completely no, is the red line they wouldn't want to cross for the kids, right? So, do you think educators, and I'm just telling from a very minimum understanding of how things are, right? So, I want to understand, like, do you think educators should also be like, on board with this, your idea of controlled AI users?
Yeah, look, I think that if educators are trying to craft a classroom, I think it's impossible to completely ban AI use for a start, right? Across all aspects of your class, and yes, you can to a certain extent probably stop the use in assessment. Like if you just had face-to-face exams, pen and paper exams, then although who knows, smart devices, all these things, you see stories about all this, so there could still be AI use going on. Um, but you can limit it to a certain extent. But I think um, that's purely doing that. I think is not doing a good service to the students. To your
Mhm.
point before, um, businesses are going to need people who know how to use AI.
Mhm.
And so if you're not talking about it, if you're not thinking about how to incorporate it in your class, if you're not teaching students, especially teaching students about responsible use, about ethical use,
Mhm.
then they're potentially going to be getting bad information elsewhere, which is going to be worse for you and worse for them.
Mhm.
So there is going to be a different level of some educators are always going to be more comfortable
Mhm.
than others with using AI, both from a capability standpoint, but also from potentially an ethical standpoint, right? Because everyone's different. Everyone has different views on AI.
Mhm.
But I think um, you really have to be thinking about what is going to be best for the students.
Mhm.
And if you're more skeptical about AI, I think that's fine, and you can obviously um, highlight as we should be, teachers should be doing in terms of some of the concerns with AI. Um, but you still have to show them what it's capable of, show them how they can use it, all those things. I think that if you're not doing that, then you're actually effectively doing your students a disservice because they're, if every educator or institution was doing that, and that's all the students got, and they didn't get, they weren't able to responsibly use AI, then when they graduated, they would be at a disadvantage from a student who had been. So I think I do think that all educators should be thinking clearly about, and it's also subject specific. It's also level specific, right? This is one of the things why I think it's so complicated. And because you cannot, and this is where I think one of the challenges are with setting policies, because it's all so context specific that it's very hard well, it's impossible to set a policy that's going to cover everything, all scenarios. So you have to really that's why as well the educator has to be so responsible to think about the best way to incorporate it or introduce it or advise it to the students. Um, but I would again, and I'm sure every educator would agree on this, though, that they need to really remember what their number one goal is, which is to develop the skills. And those key fundamental skills haven't changed irrespective of AI or not. So you have to really be thinking about, okay, how am I developing those key fundamental skills? And then how am I creating an environment that actually checks that they are there? And so that remains the same for everyone.
So, during the earlier part of the conversation, you mentioned about uh, a tool called Clarity, right?
Yes.
So I just want to ask, like, I find it very fascinating. Like, how does it even work? Like, what are the pointers it looks like? And also within the company, how did you come up with this idea? Is it building on the existing something software you already had, or is it just a completely new product? And whose brainchild is this?
Yeah, so maybe I'll take the second part first. It's built into our kind of core product. Well, so it's an add-on to the core product, Turnitin Feedback Studio, which is so basically there's no additional workflows, no additional um, ch no significant changes that current users have to make in that regard. And the reason why that we came up with it, so really was as a response to uh, customers all over the world, to universities all over the world, after we released AI detection, which was that it's certainly useful, but it's not going to be enough, right? It's not, like I said, we're changing now um, in the world of AI, and it's not enough anymore to validate the learning through that final essay or whatever that final submission is. That artifact, whatever it is that you're completing, um, is kind of a byproduct of the learning, and we're not confident enough now that learning is always happening through that artifact. So we need to see more of the process. So that was really impetus to build something. So it's been about 12 months in the building stage, and so yeah, what it is a composition space. So it's a bit like Google Docs for people to be familiar with, but it's within a structured assessment uh, online assessment as all of our assessments are. So the educator, the teacher would set the assessment, and then the student would complete it within the Clarity editor. So rather than doing it in Google Docs, they would do it in Clarity.
Mhm.
As I said, they've got all the tools that they would expect to have in Google Docs or another word editor, but they also have access to this AI assistant. But the AI assistant has guardrails, so it is not going to tell them the answer. It is not going to write for them. It is only going to support them in terms of their queries to help them in terms of advise them on writing, tell them, give them some ideas of what they might want to research, potentially help them brainstorm, all those kinds of things, but it will not write the essay. It also understands what the rubric is and it understands what the instructions are. So if the student is confused about, something in the rubric or something in the instructions, they could ask it, and it understands that, so it can give them useful feedback. Um, then at the end of the process, so as the student is writing, everything effectively is getting recorded. And then at the end of the process, the student would submit the piece of work, and then the educator can go back and they can actually view a playback of the whole editing process. So for the first time, really, you're going to be able to see, the teacher's going to be able to see exactly how that piece of work has been put together. And so that is important from an integrity point of view, of course. So you can see if things have been copied and pasted a lot, haven't been edited, if it's been matched with another source, if that's come from AI, you'll be able to tell as well. Um, so it ensures the integrity of the assessment, ensures that the student has done their own work. But you can also then incorporate, you can actually kind of see. So for example, you might see that a student has spent far too much time, because it also records the amount of time, the length of time that's been taken on the assessment. Obviously, how long it is as well, and then it compares that against the cohort, so you can actually see outliers. But yeah, potentially a student has spent far too long editing a certain paragraph. And so you might be able to go back to the student then and say, look, your first version of this was actually really good. And then you re-edit it and re-edit it and re-edit it, and you should be more confident in your own voice first time because the first version was there already. So you don't need to spend all this time. It's better spent maybe on another area where it wasn't as good.
Mm,
So you can tell all that. And then the other really interesting thing that we do is we obviously record the history of the student's interaction with the AI assistant. And so then when we're talking about responsible AI use, or understanding how students are using AI, then you can really start to see that in how they've been interacting with the assistant. So are they asking it, super basic questions, right? Or are they getting into a really, a much deeper discussion through a series of follow-up questions to really try and get down to some more important detail.
mm.
Um, so you can be more confident then that this student actually, yeah, they actually really know how they're using AI. So that's the other interesting piece is that the educator can actually really see how the student is interacting with an AI tool, which of course is something that normally they wouldn't get, like unless it was maybe in-class assessment in terms of how they're using ChatGPT or whatever. But that visibility usually isn't there for the teacher, unless the student was proactively sharing it.
No, this is very clear that teachers and universities and schools must love this platform, right? But do students also love this platform? Do they like this setup? Or do they resist it? Like, they should go back to Google Docs, or, kids might come up with something like it's not familiar. Because say Google Docs it's a pretty good, neat writing platform, right? If you want to write anything. But if you anything outside, apart from Word, for instance, like, so it just it's a new learning platform, right? It's a new platform to get used to. So I just wanted to ask, like,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
it, they just raised it.
yeah. So I mean, we got student feedback throughout the development process, and that feedback was pretty positive. I think ultimately it's going to come down to um, uh, the teachers making it clear why this is important from a both from an integrity perspective, but also from a skills building perspective. And I would come back again to this concern that students have about their AI uh, harming their ability to learn key skills. And yeah, in our the survey that we did on this, and which is backed up by other surveys as well, by the way, not just our survey, there is a strong majority of students are concerned about kind of AI eroding their skills building. And so I think there's the ability for students to be in a controlled AI environment as opposed to having access to all tools when they're writing and having that temptation, I think is something that will resonate. Also the equal playing field as well. So I think it's very clear that students um, don't like it if they feel like other students are effectively cheating, and they're doing all this hard work, and someone else isn't doing any work and getting a grade better than them. That is something that students absolutely don't like.
So,
So sorry, yeah.
no, no, just one of the things which I wanted to ask, like, So it's clear that, like, do you think this product as a concept can be also used for different, what you could say, interviews, job interviews, where you have to provide some sort of writing, for instance, or maybe it could be used for coding, where face-to-face interviews where you're allowed to use some sort of a tools on the basis. Do you see it's being deployed in multiple ways, different industries or sectors?
Uh, so I mean, we have already started thinking about how it could be used in different ways in outside of writing at universities. So, for example, like say with coding, right? To understand how people are coding, because that's another challenge for that. It's an interesting idea of using in other verticals. I would say that um, certainly I haven't had any discussions around that yet, but it could be useful. Yeah. Uh, and anytime I think when you want to ensure that someone has got skills that they say they do, and to be able to prove that and potentially do that at scale, then it could be useful. I think, it'd have to be still mixed up with kind of face to face, right, and all those kinds of things. But yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, who knows where it could go, but we're definitely thinking about it outside of writing, though. Yeah, for things like coding or other ways that where you'd want to do more process tracking.
So, how do you plan to like? Have you deployed it in India as well? Like, are Indian universities using this product already, or do you?
So we've got I think we've got a few people piloting it at the moment. Like I say, we've only released it within the last 6 to 8 weeks, so it's very, very new.
Mhm.
So we're still in early stages. But one of the things that I have found really um, I've been really pleased about has been how universal a positive response has been. So it hasn't been there hasn't been a country that I've been to yet where they've said, "Oh, we don't think this is relevant for us." Everyone can see the relevance, and that goes for India as well. I think one of the interesting things I would say with India that we'd see is that maybe this touches a little bit on some of the things you said before, is in what we've seen different in India compared to some of the markets, not unique for sure, but is often still there is sometimes reluctance to provide technology to students.
Mhm.
Um, we've seen certainly more so than in other markets, and I think again that attitude needs to be has to be completely rethought in generative AI world. Because if you're not giving access to technology to students, if you're not the ones providing the technology to students, they're probably getting it from somewhere else. So you want to, it's controlled, responsible use. It's, are you creating the environment where students feel comfortable about using technology? Because as well, there might be students who don't know what to do, and so you don't want to get into a situation where some students who know technology well are using it and maximizing it, and then other students who don't know it as well or feel more cautious about it and not getting access to it. Um, so I think one of the things that will, and I really hope we start to see is universities being more open about actually using technology with students in a controlled way, so that they can um, they can get access in the right way, and like in the end, it comes back to more transparency, right? So there's more transparency on both sides in terms of what's happening.
So, like, before I conclude, like, just two things which I wanted to ask. One of the things is like, how do you see AI becoming like part of our lives? How much of integration or distance, or what kind of level of interaction we will have, say, a couple of years later, maybe with the AI?
I mean, it's interesting again. I think it does depend on it depends on the individuals at the moment, I would say. So some people are using obviously AI every day. I would say I've increased my AI usage over the last 6 months to where it's pretty rare where I don't use it now on a daily basis for various tasks. Whereas would obviously t tends to be, not exclusively, but maybe tends to be older generations really are kind of out of it at the moment. Um, so I think it'll be a natural thing, as people get more used to it and they see different opportunities to use it in different contexts. I think just reading and listening to some things about this in terms of companies deploying AI, it seems like there hasn't been a big productivity gain yet, right, that's been seen. Um, so I think with any technology, there's kind of the initial hype, right? And then there's a gap between what the hype is and what the reality is. Um, but there are some things now that I think, and I don't know about you, but I find myself using ChatGPT a lot more when I used to use Google. And when ChatGPT first came out, obviously you couldn't do that because it wasn't current. It was like 2 years old. Everything was 2 years out of date. Um, but now I find myself increasingly using ChatGPT instead of Google because the Google results are so bad. Um, but also because you can ask it a lot more complex questions about something and it'll be able to respond in a much more meaningful way, which means that you don't have to you don't have to dive through lots of Google links to try and find what you're getting. So it is getting, I think, more useful kind of all the time, and so we probably don't even realize how, where it can go yet, most people. So I can only see that people is going to increase in daily life.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting like, how especially I had never thought of AI's role in education and especially working with kids. And today I got to learn so many things, just from the different aspects, and especially about this tool. It sounds very interesting. And also, if I were a student, I would have definitely not made any excuse not to use this. Right? If I, I would have said like, okay, this interface is bad or whatever. But but I know for sure because it's not like I have ever cheated in my exams, but it's just like someone just forces anything upon you, like okay, this is like where you have to work and not trust, right? But still, like it's just me being just being funny. Uh, yeah, but also as far as using AI goes, my interactions with AI is just for like different purposes, like and I'm also very conflicted about this using as a user. I love the ease of use, and also as you said, now it's giving you current information and very hyper contextualized information. But also I'm in the media industry, right? And also I realize that a lot of our web traffic, a lot of people who would come to read news or and get information would come from Google search. Okay, they would search a
Right.
topic. For instance,
Yeah.
what does Turnitin clarity all
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
So if I
Yeah.
had done the story or I had published a news, so my publication would have appeared, or maybe through some algorithms, if it appeared over there, right? I would have gotten some clicks, and that clicks would have been like a proposition for the media company to go to the advertisers and say like, hey, we are one of the largest.
Yeah.
We get as many as visitors or views. So now that traffic is drastically going down, right? And all the publishing companies who are like, you might have heard of SEO, search engine optimization.
Yes. 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 Yes.
So a lot of content you see on the web is highly SEO'd. It's just optimized for them to rank better in Google or certain algorithms. But now with that, with even Google search is now trying to change it to AI first, and you can go to the
Yes.
typical
Yes.
link. But so that is a conflict. I like the ease of access and ease of use, but also at the same time I'm worried that it is just gonna and also that there are no other alternatives right now. Like for media publications, the conventional media publication, they're still reliant on bulk of search volume. And if
Yeah.
you get time, I'll just share some write-ups, some articles like how media is suffering from this Aeon thought, and media is like our bread and butter, right? So that is what it is, right? So, but yeah, I get it. Like my interactions. are mostly about if I don't want to put an effort to say put a caption for my video, or I'll just put in the bits of this conversation and just say like, hey, what possible headlines I can think of, possible, what would be the relevant category I can target, for for viewers to read or watch. So those kind of interactions, it's very much more a very minimum, bare minimum, but I'm not dumping my major tasks to it as of now. But yeah, yeah, I get a point, but I think
Yeah, like I say, it's different. I mean, obviously for a media industry, like I totally get where the future of SEO type goes in a generative AI world. That's a different question. But yeah, everyone's going to be at different paces and different depending on your job and what you're doing. It's going to be different for sure.
yeah, correct. All right. I think that is what I wanted to ask. If you think there is something more you want to talk about, might have missed to ask, you can share. Uh,
I think we've had a very full discussion, so I think
all right.
yeah, we're all good. But it's been very nice chatting to you,
Thank you so
and
much.
yeah, yeah,
Hello,
like I said,
all.
it's very exciting. Anyway, we're in a very exciting, slightly slightly scary, I guess, but certainly a very exciting phase at the moment. So it's there's not a boring day for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for taking your time and speaking to us on a weekend. And have a good Saturday. It's a Saturday evening. I would not let you sit in front of a monitor again, laptop. Have a good time ahead.
Okay.
Have a good
Thank
day.
you, Cole. Nice to speak with you.